For a while, this '05 Mercury Montego would have various levels of drippiness whenever it would rain outside, and the worst occasion was when there was a puddle in the passenger footwell. There were a bunch of places on the dashboard where you could see signs of where water was dripping out of, but since it occasionally rained on me from up above my head, I knew that it was something up high, and on pretty much any car with a sunroof, if there's a leak, it's probably coming from the sunroof. So, having determined that it was a safe bet that it was coming from the sunroof, the first thing I did was I opened it up and cleaned up the rubber gasket seal around the sunroof window. There's definitely some dirt there and some pine needle fragments that made it hard for it to make a good seal, but that wasn't the whole story. This car has a plastic drip tray below the seal so that any water that gets out should fall into this tray, and there's 2 holes in the corners so that the water will drain into those holes, down and out of the car at the bottom, or at least near the bottom, which is where I discovered it on this car. So I poured some water into that tray and watched how fast the water drained out through those holes. It was all starting to make sense. If it was a light rain, there wasn't enough water coming in through that seal to fill that drip tray up too fast for it to drain out, and nothing would leak out into the inside of the car. If it was a medium rain, it might fill up enough so it starts dripping out, and if there was a lot of rain, it really overpowered that system and a lot of stuff would leak out through that tray. So the next step would be to use some compressed air to blow any obstruction out of that tube. That's tricky though, because you can't use a whole lot of pressure. You risk rupturing the tube and then it leaks out through somewhere else, and then you have the problem all over again. I used a large board that I didn't care about getting messy to protect the interior from any of the overspray that may occur. I lifted the car up, took a wheel off, and poured some water into the drainage tray and checked on the bottom to see where it was draining out of. I found the tube. This one was in the wheel well, not down at the bottom. So now that I knew where it exited, I put the compressed air nozzle into the tube and squeezed just a little bit to let a little air in and blow out the obstructions. My phone camera didn't do a great job of capturing the spray that came out of there. It was a lot more dramatic in person, but the job got done. And make sure you do this gently, because if you put too much air in there, the obstruction may be too strong and you may end up blowing out the hose instead of the obstruction. Replacing that hose would be doable, but a very lengthy process. The passenger side is what needed this done the most, but I did both sides just to be sure. All that work was done months ago, and since then I haven't had any water dripping on my head or forming puddles in the footwells. If you want to tackle this job yourself, make sure you do it safely by moving the sunroof back first, disconnecting the battery, and then checking the button to make sure that it's not going to move with some stored energy that's stored elsewhere. Keep your fingers out of pinch areas, and you shouldn't need to use any harsh chemicals for any of this job. If you want to use something stronger, use a very watered down degreaser, because if you use anything too strong, you might erode away the hose that leads down to the bottom of the car, and if that erodes away, then you're going to have the same problem, but it's going to be replacing that hose. Thanks for watching, be safe, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next Car Simplified video.